Welcome to A Better Path Through Grief, a podcast where we explore the many different ways people cope with grief and move through the grieving process. I'm your host, Lamina Davis, and I'm honored to be sharing this journey with you. I have tried to start this multiple times. I even wrote down what I was going to say, my recollection of that day, and read it, but I can't get through it. I feel like reading it is not raw or authentic, I guess. I mean, even though they're my thoughts, I feel like I should just tell the story. April 14th, 2017 was just like any other day. I had gotten up at about 6 o'clock and I started work because I knew that I would be only working a few hours because my son Dasean had a doctor's appointment that day. And the doctor's appointment would have been in Kansas City. I started work, and at about 7:30, 8 o'clock, Dasean woke up. He had one of his friends spend the night. At about 8:30, another boy was dropped off by his mom, and the three of them decided that they were going to go and hang out on the back deck. And they sat there for a good while, just talking. It was kind of a chilly day. It was kind of spritzy, rainy kind of day, but they kind of all just hung out on the back deck, sat and talked and chilled. And about 9:45, my son came back into the house and he let me know that he was hungry and that if I could make him a cheeseburger, a special cheeseburger with bacon and an egg on top. He told me that he was going to go to the store and that he would be right back to eat it. And so could I make it while he was gone? And I said yes. I also told him, do not stress me out because you have a doctor's appointment and our ride would be here at 11 o'clock to pick us up to take us to your doctor's appointment. And he promised me that he would be right back and he wouldn't stress me out. He knew he had the appointment and he would be back. Him and his friends left. As he was going out the door, as he always did, he screamed, well, he didn't scream. He kind of loudly said, I love you, as he always did when he walked out the door. I made him his cheeseburger, finished it up, wrapped it up for him, and then I went back into my home office and worked the rest of my shift, which was half day. I really didn't pay much attention to the sirens that were going off in the distance. I didn't think much of it. I just continued to work. Around 10:30, I noticed that Dasean wasn't back. So I clocked out of work because I knew we were leaving at 11. So I requested to work until 10:30. So I clocked out of work and I tried to call. He had my cell phone. So I tried to call my cell phone and there was no answer. So I figured, okay, I'm going to give him a few minutes. And I went on Facebook and just started scrolling on Facebook. And that's where I saw the first post about an accident that had happened where one person had died. And I didn't think anything of it. It kind of went over my head in passing. I thought it was a terrible thing that someone lost their life in an accident. But I didn't put anything, in my mind, I didn't think my son or anybody was related to that. 10:45 rolled by and then I'm starting to get a little annoyed because I told him to be home by 11 o'clock and he wasn't home. And so I'm messaging the person that was supposed to give us a ride and I'm asking him, had he heard from Dasean? And he said no. And I told him we may have to cancel the appointment because I'm not sure if he will be home in time for when you come to pick us up. and we may have to reschedule the appointment. And he said, that's fine, just let me know. Well, my older son, Devon, came home, and I asked him if he had seen his brother. And he said no, but there was a really bad accident out by the hospital, and you might want to check to see if he was involved in that. And I don't know what made him say that, but him saying that finally put alarm bells in my head. And in that moment, it hit me, something is very wrong. That mother's intuition hit me that something was so wrong. And at that moment, I couldn't think. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I needed to do first. And I tried to calm myself down. And I sent my former boss a message on Facebook asking him if he knew anything about the accident that happened, if he knew who the victims were or anything like that. And he said he would get back to me to see if he could find anything out. I did explain to him that my son was not home, and I was just worried that he might have been involved in the accident somehow. He got back to me and he said, your son's name is not on any list. We don't know the names of the people. There were, people that were brought in, but we don't know their names. We did, I think there at that time, 2 of the boys had passed. So at this time, I'm frantic. I'm, as he's saying that, we don't know the names, that could be good or bad news. So I'm losing my mind now. I'm like, this can't be happening. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm sure he's fine. He's just getting on my nerves. He's stressing me out. He's supposed to be home and he's not home. And, in the back of my mind, it's like, no, nothing like this could ever happen to me or my family, that sort of thing. I get on Facebook because now he's absolutely late. We're going to have to reschedule his appointment. And I let our ride know that we were going to have to reschedule. I called to cancel the appointment. I just kind of asked the person that was going to give us a ride if he knew anything about, because he was in law enforcement. And I asked him if he knew anything about the accident, and he said he didn't know anything yet. And so I did let him know of my fear that, Dasean may be involved in that. And he kind of calmed my fears and said, no, there's no way, he's probably just out, hanging out with his friends and lost track of time. I get on Facebook and I get on his page because now I hadn't heard from him. I'm wondering where he's at. He's got my phone and he's not answering. So I get on his Facebook and I write a post of, if anybody has seen him, could they message me or tell him to message me or tell him to call me on the house phone? At that point, I got a message from a young lady who said, I'm not sure if you're Day Day's mom. They used to call him Day Day. If you're Day Day's mom, but I think you need to get to the hospital. And my mind started spinning. I said, is there a reason why I need to get to the hospital? And they said, it's possible your son was in an accident. And I was in denial. My mind would not go there. So I said, I need to call a cab to get to the hospital. And she offered to come and get me. I gave her my address, and she said she would be at my house in about 10 minutes. So I'm getting ready, and in the back of my mind, I'm just saying, no, this is not him. He's going to come running up the back stairs in a minute, and as he always did, scream, mother, mother, just to let me know he was home. I could hear him running up the back stairs, and every sound I heard that sounded like him running up the back stairs, my heart just took a leap as I'm waiting for this ride to go to the hospital. And then I was let down when it wasn't him. It was just maybe the wind or something else knocking against the deck outside or something, but I held on to hope that he would come running up those back stairs, just busting in the door, getting on my nerves like he usually did. The young lady finally showed up, and she arrived with another gentleman, and they both started asking me a couple of questions, and they were telling me that they didn't want to give false information or get me in a panic because they didn't have all the facts or anything, so they didn't want to say anything that would lead me to believe that my son was actually involved in this accident. When they were asking me the questions, I was answering the questions, but the look that they kept giving each other just kind of made me believe that my son was involved, and the fact that he wasn't home yet, that he wasn't answering the phone, my fear just kept going, but that denial was still there. Like, this can't be happening. This doesn't happen to me. Nothing like this would ever happen to me. We got to the hospital. Now, I worked for the hospital at this point for 10 years. And when I walked in, I was never so lost. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what to do. So the young lady led me to a waiting area in the ER, a closed off waiting area, had a door. It was like a little room in the waiting area. And she went out and she said, I'm going to go get the detective and I'll be right back. And so she went out, she let the detective know that I was there, and he came in really quick and he said, I'm going to talk to you in a minute, just give me a minute and I'll be right back. And he went out again. And I'm in agony right now. I don't know where my son is. I don't know if he's okay. I don't know what's going on, even if I should be here, if I'm even involved in any of this. So waiting was very, very hard. The detective finally came in because, when we were in there waiting, it was just deathly quiet. And people tried to make small talk, but I really wasn't in the mood for small talk. I just wanted to know about my son. Detective comes back in and he sits down and he asks me my name. He asked me who was I there for, and I said, I don't know. I'm hoping my son is not involved in this, but there's this accident and I'm just here to make sure my son is okay. And so he started asking me questions about my son, his name, and what he was wearing. How tall he was, what his hair looked like, and I gave him a description because I remembered what he was wearing. He was wearing a blue zip-up sweater with a hood. He had on a pair of blue jeans, and he had on a pair of red shorts underneath his jeans. As soon as I told him that he had on the red shorts under his jeans, he looked at me and he said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry." And that is all I heard. I'm sorry. That is all I heard, because I started to scream, and I guess I screamed because I couldn't hear myself screaming. He said that Dasean had died on the scene. He took the impact of the crash, and he didn't feel any pain, but he was gone. My whole world just fell apart in that moment. My life has not been the same. Dasean was the youngest of my 3 kids. I have a daughter and 2 sons. And Dasean was the youngest of my 2 sons. The boys that were hanging out with him that day were also in the car with him, and they didn't make it. And there was another young man that was in the car who also didn't make it. And there were two survivors, one of which was driving the car. It has not been an easy road, but I have been compelled to tell my story so that other people who are grieving the loss of children or just having grief in general can have a place to come and just either listen or tell their story, and maybe together we can all cope and find a better path through grief. I told my son several times, I would always tell him, there's always a better path. And there was a time where he would get in trouble. He spent some time in juvie. He wasn't perfect. And I would tell him, there's always a better path. And a friend of mine who also lost a child, we met up for lunch one day, and we were just talking about what we've been through and our journey. And I told her that I wanted to start this podcast, but I couldn't think of a name, and I was worried I wouldn't find people that would be willing to tell their story or what kind of topics I would have. And I told her, that I would always tell my son there was always a better path because we got to talking about our kids and stuff. And she said to me, that's the name of your podcast, A Better Path Through Grief. And I lost it. I because it hit me like a ton of bricks. She was right. There is a better path through grief. And I think that together we all can find that better path. And we can be supportive to each other. I hope this is not a rambly intro. And it is my first time recording something like this. The podcast may not be consistent at first, but I feel like I have to do something. I have to try and bring us together so that we can support one another. I know so many mothers out there who have lost sons. I know so many people who are grieving, and grief just doesn't have to be about death. There are many different types of grief. So this podcast, I would like to be of support to all of those who are grieving, no matter what type of grief it is. I'm not really sure what else to say. This is going to be the intro to our podcast. I'm not even sure what the next episode is going to be. I do encourage anyone who wants to come on and tell their story. They are more than welcome. If they just want to come on and talk about their grief, or if they want to talk about their loved ones, if they want to talk about anything that they need support with. I am not a licensed physician. I am not a therapist. I am a mother who lost her child and would like support and would like to give support to those who are in similar situations. I'm not sure what's going to happen after this. I figured I'd be raw and real and tell my story so that those who are in similar situations can feel comfortable telling their story. I think I need to stop rambling now. So I'm going to end this recording, and I hope in the future that we can help each other find a better path through grief. Thank you for those who listened. God bless you.